from the South Pole, the sun never sets. Within the correct form of the earth, hollow, concave, spherical, stationary, sunlight is bending.
Hi guys, this is my version of the Earth's magnetic field lines within the concave Earth, as opposed to a convex Earth where they have a barb magnet in the middle. I believe that the magnetic current or field lines are wrapping around the outer edge, going in and out from the north and south. I believe there's actually openings in the north and south of the rind. Okay, I believe those openings are covered over with continental plates. I believe that's also why the poles of the Earth are flattened, because they don't have that outer metal covering. So you have these openings. This is a cutaway, obviously, but at the north and south, we have these openings, and then the magnetic flux is exiting out the north, going around the outside, and coming back in from the south. And these openings are offset. The rind is offset slightly. If you'll notice the auroral zone, it's like 10 degrees offset. It's not perfectly aligned with the geographic north and south poles. And I believe that this rind is precessing, slowly shifting, because I believe that there's like layers within the Earth, whether they be water or oil, that's actually lubricating the outer rind to press us back and forth. I believe that's also why the magnetic north and south poles shift, because of this precessing effect. The magnetic north poles are not precisely in unison with the shift. I believe that's because of the different perturbations that are happening within the Earth, but for the most part, I believe that this is like a rocking back and forth mechanism. We're never going to have like a magnetic reversal, I don't believe, especially because the time is short, but this is how I believe it's operating. I believe the auroras are happening because of the Earth's magnetic field is interfering with the sun's magnetic field at the glass sky level at 100 kilometers, and that's what's causing the auroras to happen. And yeah, so this is my theory about the Earth's magnetic field. It has an outer metal rind to it, and they have openings in the north and south that are covered over with continental plate, which flattens out the poles. Thanks for watching.
Phenomena that Einstein first predicted in 1937, though he said it would never be observed. He underestimated observers. If you look at this picture, you'll see these blue things, these weird blue things. That is a phenomena that we now understand as gravitational lensing. Einstein told us that a mass will curve space around it. And he realized, therefore, if you had a big enough mass and you have a source of light behind that mass, the light can bend around that object and come back and be magnified, just like my glasses magnify things. Or, like a cut glass goblet, if you look through it, I'd see many images of this room. Mass can act like a lens and magnify things and split images, and that's precisely what we're seeing. All of these blue things are different images of a single galaxy located about 3 billion light years behind this cluster. Gravity is magnifying the image, distorting it, and bending it. Remarkable. Truly remarkable. But because we understand general relativity, we could work backwards.
During the time of the flood, these sonoluminescent stars, they clustered together and they became very hot. And they began to melt through the glass celestial firmament and creating these little pockets, these little indentations and openings. The windows of heaven were opened, right? The windows of heaven were opened, and so the water came down. The water also came up from the fountains of the deep of the earth. So we had water coming down and water coming up. And so after the water came down and after the sand came down to The sand is what created this secondary firmament at 100 kilometers, which actually pushed the water down. That's why we have the rainbow, because the sun is within this region here. So the sun is only a half sphere. Everything is operating on curved light. And so that's why we see rainbows, because the sun is being dispersed through this glass medium and being projected onto the raindrops. The raindrops are not the source of the rainbow. But anyway, going back to the celestial sphere, glass sky, it healed back together. So it closed up. The windows of heaven were closed after the great flood. So now you have these indentations, these peaks and valleys. This glass celestial firmament, because of the way it had been ruptured, it had been opened up, and then it healed back together, it's not perfectly smooth like that. It's more like this glass here.
Let's go back now to the two-dimensional pattern of the CMB map. There are things we can do with that as well. First one is lensing. Deflection of light by matter is well observed in astronomy. This has to be done with a simulation. Simulate what the cosmic background would look like with this 6-parameter model, fits Planck data, but the cosmic background. Here's a patch of sky 10 degrees across. And now add intervening matter, add in the rest of the universe. How would this pattern change? Catch that? Unlensed, unaffected by intervening matter, and affected by intervening matter. The lensing rearranges the CMB pattern a little bit.
There's no need to have mass act like a lens when there actually is a lens. A cut glass goblet lens of the celestial sphere, damaged after the flood.
Here's an inversion by Tony Tyson, who's now up in Davis. This is the system, and the spikes are where this is where the mass is in this system. The spikes are where the galaxies are. But you notice most of the mass in this whole system of clusters of galaxies is not where the galaxies are. It's between the galaxies. It's where nothing is shining. About 50 times as much mass in this system, and in all systems we can measure, comes from stuff that doesn't shine. And physicists, with their linguistic perspicacity, have called it dark matter.
Tiny bubbles and
Tiny bubbles. Look at this. Look at this, guys. Tiny bubbles. Stars are as big as grains of sand. I'm not kidding you. Fraudulent astronomy is in big trouble. You astronomer, are either a fool or a liar. Now, if you're a fool, there's a little bit of grace for you because you didn't know. You're just stupid, ignorant. But if you're a liar, you're in big trouble because you've been deceiving the public, and you're going to have to face me at judgment time. You liars. You know that the stars are up in the middle of the concave Earth in a celestial sphere, a literal celestial crystalline sphere that contains water, contains the celestial ocean, and the stars are created by a process called multi-bubble sonoluminescence.
When physicists have an important number, they give it a Greek letter all the time. So we call it omega. Omega is the ratio of the total amount of stuff we know is in the universe divided by the amount of stuff you need to make a flat universe, the boundary between an open and closed universe. If it's less than 1, the universe is open. If it's greater than 1, the universe is closed. And we have now measured unambiguously that there's only 30% of the amount of material in the universe, including dark matter, to make the universe flat. This is a real problematic number. We now know the universe has only 1/3 the amount of matter to make it flat. The problem is that theorists like me knew the answer. The universe must be flat. Why? Well, there are two reasons. There's the one I normally say, which is it's the only mathematically beautiful universe, which is true. But there's another reason that I don't usually talk about, but I'll talk about here. It turns out that in a flat universe, the total energy of the universe is precisely zero. Because gravity can have negative energy. So the negative energy of gravity balances out the positive energy of matter. What's so beautiful about a universe with total energy zero? Well, only such a universe can begin from nothing. And that is remarkable. Because the laws of physics allow a universe to begin from nothing. You don't need a deity. You have nothing, zero total energy, and quantum fluctuations can produce a universe. So if the universe isn't flat, we're worried. Because then you've got energy at the very beginning of time. So that was another reason that people like me were pretty sure the universe was flat. But the damn observers came up with the wrong number. But the damn observers came up with the wrong number.
Well, if the damn observers come up with the wrong number, just make shit up.
Radiation coming at that surface. On this surface is a very important scale, 1 degree. Why 1 degree? Because that represents a distance of 100,000 light years. Now, this surface existed when the universe was 100,000 years old, and Einstein tells us no information can propagate faster than light. So that means nothing that happened over here at that time could ever affect anything that happens over here. But more importantly, if I have a lump of matter that's this big across at that time, it doesn't even know it's a lump, because gravity can't have traveled across it. So it's like Wile E. Coyote in those cartoons when he goes off the cliff. He waits a while before he collapses, okay? And such large lumps won't collapse. So the biggest lumps that can have collapsed at that time will be 1 degree across. And that gives us a cosmic triangle. Because we have a ruler that's 100,000 light years across.
A couple assumptions there, Larry, that you are totally erroneous about. Number one, you're making the assumption, the uniformitarianism assumption, that things happen gradually over time. 14 billion years old. Dear Lord. No, the universe is quite young, happening very catastrophically with cavitation. But anyway, going back to your 100,000 year 1 degree scenario, I mean, do you not even understand? Have you ever heard of the concept of the concave Earth? This is not Earth. No. And this wall that you talk about is the celestial sphere. It's the wall, it's the dark waters and the thick clouds of the celestial sphere, which contains water. This is glass, crystalline glass, okay? The stars are embedded in here. That's where the solar luminescence is coming from. That's the wall. That's the wall layer. And then a concave Earth. Okay, you're inside the Earth. You have the glass skies. Okay? You're looking, this 1 degree that you're talking about is minute. Okay? It's not 100,000 light years. The celestial sphere is approximately, let's say, 15,000 kilometers in circumference. That's it. So 1 degree is only going to be 150 kilometers. So if you're measuring 1 degree and you're putting triangulation coordinates on 1 degree of 150 kilometers, it's relatively small. But you stretch it across 100,000 light years. It's asinine. There is no light years, Larry. Wake up. Wake up, man. You've been drugged. You're living inside the concave Earth. This wall is the dark waters, the thick clouds of the celestial sphere. The heavenly pyramid is above that. You don't see that. That's what's going on, Larry. The universe is not flat. And you say light. No, light bends, Larry. Light bends. You ever hear Wilhelm Martin? He showed geodetically that light bends. So you're wrong. The universe is not flat, and if you're really going to worry about that there is a deity, then, just, I'll let you know I'm a nice guy, but, judgment's coming. Because the sun's going to stop soon. But the universe is definitely not flat, so no matter how many calisthenics you do and contortions you do and try to imagine it being flat, wanting it to be flat. Maybe if you pray really hard, it'll be flat. No. So this triangulation method is desperation to show that it's flat. You're stretching it 100,000 light years? Light years are not even existent. What's wrong with you? The CMB, the cosmic microwave background, speaks of alignment, polarization, as a dipole. Celestial sphere is a band. It divides the sphere into two hemispheres that have opposing currents. That's what steers the sun north and south. I've explained this in previous videos. And it's telling of a deity because it is definitely not flat. It's encased in a ruptured glass. There's water on the inside. The stars are created by sonoluminescence, which means they are bubbles. Of course they're not going to have mass. Bubbles in water. The water surrounding the bubbles will have the mass. That's the dark matter. Simply dark water. And judgment's coming. Because the sun's going to stop. See, this celestial sphere contains the pyramid that generates the heat, the thermal heat to reach the sun, and there's really not much of a heat escape. There might be a little heat escape in the trapezium and the Orion Nebula, but for the most part it's overheating. It's going to stop just like how an engine stops when it overheats. And then when it does, the sun will stop. It will cause all the ice that's attached to the glass sky at 100 kilometers high to rupture and unravel like a scroll and burn up the earth. Are you ready for that? Are you ready for judgment? Stop lying to the people. Stop insulting me. I am not crazy. I'm telling of judgment to come, people. Repent as soon as possible and acknowledge me.
The sun is not spherical, ladies and gentlemen. If it were spherical, okay, you could take these infrared or ultraviolet or whatever false color images of the sun, and you will always see a defined rim, a defined illuminated ring to the sun. You understand what I'm saying? If the sun were spherical, we'd see it more without the ring. You know? It would just blend into the night. Where the dark regions, they would just blend into the night sky, and the lighter regions would be lighter. You wouldn't have the ring to it. That's one good indication that you know that the sun is not a ball. It's not a sphere. The sun is a half sphere. I've seen the back of the sun in a vision. I know what it looks like. It only gives the illusion of rotation. The fact that it has a differential in quote rotation from the quote equator to the quote poles is another indication that it is not a sphere. It's not a gaseous ball. It's exhibiting a conveyor belt action faster along the so-called equator, because that's where the light rays, the collimated light rays from the back of the sun, are hitting the sun at the midsection. So it's going faster there because there's higher electromagnetic activity in the midsection as opposed to the top and the bottom, or the north and the south, otherwise known as the poles. But since the sun is not a sphere, it's not a ball, it doesn't have poles and it doesn't have an equator. It has a midsection and it has the top and the bottom. This defined edge here that you see on the sun from these false color images
would not be there if the sun were a sphere, period. The sun is a half sphere. I've seen this, like I said before, in a vision when I was up in heaven above the celestial sphere, above the celestial ocean. It has a backside, and it's dark and flat from the backside. We have light hitting the back midsection of the sun. I do not call it an equator because it's not a ball. It's not a gaseous ball. And it has a top and a bottom. And there's a difference in velocity. It's not a difference in rotation because we simply have a conveyor belt action going on with these contour lines. And so this difference in velocity is actually creating the twisting, the arcing that we see in the sun. The reason why it's faster across the midsection is because of the collimated light rays that are hitting the back midsection of the sun. So we can never see the backside of the sun from Earth's vantage point. We always see the front side. Same thing with the moon. We only see the front of the moon and the front of the sun. I believe the sun and the moon were at one time one ball, where they bifurcated, they split up and became two. The sun received the light, its energy, from the pyramid, from the power source. The anode to the cathode, the father to the sun. And the moon receives the sunlight. I don't believe the moon is a self-illuminating sphere. We see shadows on the moon. We see shadows on the moon craters. So that is what's happening with the sun. It's a masterful deception. Completely fooled all of scientific humanity. They think the sun is a gaseous ball, but it's not. The sun is electric. When you see sunspots, they are actually holes. They are indicative that the sun is hollow in this area here between the back plate and the front surface. So the conveyor belt action is going to wrap around the convex side, and it's wrapping around and going behind on the concave side of the sun. It's a difference in velocity. And the reason why the midsection is faster is because the energy from the collimated light in the back is going across the midsection, energizing that section more. It's also why we have rainbows. We can tell. The reason why we see rainbows is because we see the rim of the sun. Just like if you hold a flashlight to a wall, the glass bulb in the flashlight disperses the light. Same thing with the glass in the sky in the concave Earth. The glass in the sky disperses the sunlight and projects it onto water vapor, reflective water vapor, whether it's from a garden hose or whether it's mist from after a rainstorm, or whether it's dew on the ground, or whether it's clouds when you see the rainbow from an airplane. You see the top of clouds, you see a rainbow, you see the shadow of the airplane and the rainbow. So that is what's going on. It's a masterful trick. It's a divine trick. It tripped up all of scientific mankind. The sun is electric. It's a transformer. It receives its energy from the central pyramid, father to son, anode to cathode. Thanks for watching. Hey guys, I wanted to point out a mistake I made in my concave Earth video. It was the Milky Way. I had it tilted incorrectly. It's actually, in my animation, it's going around the celestial equator. And later I found out that's not the case. It actually tilts at a 60-degree angle. So if you look up in the sky, you see the Milky Way. Now keep in mind, in the concave Earth, the Milky Way is not a spiral galaxy. This is reality. You are not in a little, you're not a little insignificant dot out in a vast, endless universe. No, that's not it. The Milky Way galaxy serves a very important function. Okay, remember in Scripture it says that the stars are created for signs and seasons. Seasons. The Milky Way actually, I'll get to that in a little bit later, but it actually governs the direction of the sun. It's what it is. It's a band. It's a ring or a band or a governor or a rudder that's wrapped around the celestial sphere. See, there's my correction of the animation. It's tilted at 60 degrees like that, and it governs the direction of the sun, whether the sun wants to go north or south laterally. And what I did was I did some investigation into the Milky Way galaxy, and it turns out that from 1990, I believe, to 1993 to 2009, there was, I guess NASA said that they had the Ulysses satellite that actually, they say it orbited the sun. Okay, well, no, I don't believe it orbited the sun. They think the sun is 93 million miles away. It's not that far away, guys. It's very close. It's within the Earth, okay? And as far as like satellites go, if you know anything about how they're not really up there, they can't get past the thermosphere because it's 2,000 degrees Celsius. Yeah. They usually, what they do is they'll mount some kind of apparatus, some kind of surveilling camera apparatus to the glass sky at 100 kilometers high, and then you can shoot the sky, you can take pictures of the sky, or they might have a very low orbiting satellite that's just going skimming above the glass. But if you get any higher than 120, 140 kilometers, the temperature increases so greatly you wouldn't survive. And then they try to tell you, well, the air molecules are too far apart. No, that's baloney. That just doesn't work that way, guys. But anyway, the Ulysses satellite, I was doing some research and I found out that it says that here, observations of the sun's poles are sensitive to the tilt of the sun's rotation axis relative to the ecliptic plane. What does that mean? Observations of the sun's poles are sensitive to the tilt. Okay, and it says that it reverses every 6 months. See, this is the key indicator, because when I looked at the band around the celestial sphere, I thought it's got to be doing something every 6 months. It's got to be serving some kind of purpose, some kind of function every 6 months, because the sun is going around the celestial sphere, but it's going through the band every 6 months. So something's happening every 6 months with the Milky Way galaxy. Not a galaxy. Well, it's not a galaxy. It's a band. Correct myself there. So yeah, I think what's going on when they took the observation with the Ulysses probe, they probably had two different apparatuses mounted at very high latitudes. This is my theory about what they did. This is my guess, basically. So this diagram, it shows a concave Earth reality in which we're living in, because light curves within the Earth. It's difficult to see the poles, the top and bottom of the sun, because like if you're standing anywhere inside the surface of the Earth, let's say you're standing here at the equator, when you always look up at the sky, you're always looking at the front of the sun. If you're like even way down here in the southern region, the way your eye works, it's like an endoscope. It's like fiber optics. You're always looking at the face of the celestial sun, of the celestial sphere. The moon's a little bit lower, so you see a little bit more of the edges of the moon, but not much. But the higher you go, especially the sun, that's why we always see the front of the sun, because light curves like an endoscope, like a fiber optic endoscope. So the Ulysses satellite, they probably, this is my guess, they simply attached cameras. If you watched, I made a video about attaching cameras to the sky, and there's actually artifacts. Google and Microsoft, they show, the space programs, they show there's artifacts of apparatuses up in the sky. And so they probably, what they did is they attached something here above on the glass sky in the southern region to monitor the southern pole. Now it's not really a pole, because I don't believe the sun is a sphere. I believe it's a half sphere. It's kind of like a kettle drum. because I told you before, I had a vision of the back of the sun. The back of the sun had these parallel rays hitting the diameter of the sun, indicating that it was a flat surface, and which also testifies to the electricity of the sun. If you understand anything about what they talk about the electricity of the sun, whether it's Walt Thornhill or Donald Scott, they say that the sun is electric. You know, this is very accurate too, because it flies in the face of mainstream solar research, which is all baloney. Okay, so in the mainstream, the standard model, they say that the sun has a core and there's convection going on. There's no indication of convection. And I can show you this video later. I'll give you a link to it later. But it shows that there's so many problems with the sun being this nuclear ball with a core. You know, convection doesn't happen that way, where they have the granules on the photosphere. They just invent this stuff up as they go, because that's not the truth about the sun. The sun is electric. The sun is hollow. Remember Eric Dollard, he said, those black holes in the sun, they're indicative of the sun being hollow. And then he also said that the sun is getting its energy from a different source, a different dimension. And I'll go into that later too. I say it's the pyramid in the middle of the earth. That is the source. That's the anode to the cathode. Okay, you have an electric current going. You have a circuitry, you're connecting, going from the top of the pyramid to the back of the sun. And the sun is revolving around the inside of the earth. So with these probes, this is how I believe what they did is in the south, during the summertime when the sun is farthest away, they get a better angle of the south side of the sun. Same thing in the north. If you're up here during the winter solstice, the sun is down here, you get a better angle of the north pole of the sun during the winter time. And so that's how I think that is what's going on. Also, I'm going to get into the different velocity, rotation, speed, the different velocities of the sidereal rotation of the celestial sphere and the solar rotation of the sun. Now, they will tell you there's an apparent difference, the heliocentrists, they will tell you there's an apparent different rotation because of how the Earth spins relative to the background of the stars as it's orbiting the sun in different positions away from the sun. But that's not true. There's actually, just how how they say there's an apparent retrograde motion to the planets when there actually is a literal retrograde within the concave Earth due to magnetism, there's also a literal difference in velocity between the celestial sphere and the sun. The celestial sphere is going slightly faster than the sun. 4 minutes faster. The sun is 24 hours, the celestial sphere is 23 hours and 56 minutes and 4 seconds or something like that. So going back here, there's an animation I made of the sun, of the kettle drum shaped sun. You're looking at it initially from the front, and then I'm turning and panning. That's the vision I saw. Actually, the vision I saw was more front on or back on. It wasn't angled like that, but that's how I saw the sun. And makes sense. So you have this energy, this electric current. It's finishing the current, going from father to son. It's kind of interesting how we call it the sun, and how we call the pyramid, or how I call the pyramid, the father of lights in James chapter 1 verse 17. So the actual function of the Milky Way band now you look here, okay, I have this labeled here. When the sun is at its highest, its crest in the summer solstice, it's going to start turning. Remember how they told you the tilt angle relative to the ecliptic? So the sun is going to start turning counterclockwise, going south now, as it passes through the Milky Way. The Milky Way steers it somehow. Must be like, what I think is this whole celestial sphere is pretty much dark and very thick clouds. The Bible says thick clouds of the sky, or dark water and thick clouds. And so I think that Milky Way band is a little bit thinner. That's why we see light coming through. And so there must be some kind of change with the thickness or the thinness of that light, and is changing the rotation of the sun slightly. It's just the bank angle, I guess you would call it, and it's starting to turn down like that. And so because of the different rotational speeds, the sun is a little bit slower. That's how the sun goes through the 12 constellations, okay? You have the ecliptic here, and then you have the celestial equator. That's the green stripe. And then the white stripe is the 60-degree band of the Milky Way. It's a band. It's not a galaxy. It has a function. So when it gets down to the south during the winter solstice, it starts turning the band, causes the sun to turn back clockwise again. So it's a governor. It has a purpose. It's a direction. Everything works. Everything has function within the concave Earth. You guys, it's once you understand it, once you have that foundational understanding of the concave Earth, everything makes perfect sense. Well, almost everything, but that's the reality in which we live, guys. The Milky Way band. Stop calling it a galaxy. It's not a galaxy. The Milky Way band, the different velocities between the sidereal and the sun. Okay, it's not an apparent difference in velocity. It's real. The sun is electric. I recommend you watching a video by Donald Scott. Of course, he doesn't understand the concave Earth, so he still has a couple problems with his understanding of the sun. But the sun has a dark side. Watch that nova. There's a nova video about how they talk about the bullshit, how they talk about, oh, there's helioseismology going on in the core of the sun, and then there's convection going on. Well, no, Donald Scott talks about how there's a temperature minimum in the chromosphere. So you got the sun, you got the surface of the sun would be the photosphere, and then the chromosphere, and then the corona. And it doesn't work that way. He's talking about how a nuclear reactor doesn't work that way. There can't be a temperature decrease and then all of a sudden an increase. But and then of course CMEs I think happen a lot slower within the concave Earth. I mean, they're talking they're saying they get really fast, like up to 1 million miles an hour. Well, that's because you're already thinking that the sun is 93 million miles away. It's not. So everything is within the Earth. Everything's happening, as far as CMEs, it's happening slower. All right. I think that about does it for this video. See, did I miss anything? No. Talk to you later.
So you have the simplicity of the concave Earth with the Milky Way swaddling band, Job 38, dividing the central celestial sphere into two separate magnetic polarization fields based upon the cosmic microwave background radiation dipole, and also based upon the so-called planetary nebula, those hourglass-shaped symmetrical nebula. They are all, see that axis right there? That central stem? It's all running perpendicularly to the Milky Way galactic plane. It's right there in Scripture, guys. These things are minuscule, and they're showing evidence that the Milky Way band divides the central celestial sphere into two separate magnetic fluxes, so to speak, which actually steers the sun. When the sun goes across that band, the sun changes direction from 6 months from the summer to 6 months into winter. It's right there, guys. Simple stuff. Simple stuff. So this just like completely shatters all the so-called cosmological mainstream research into the galaxy. It's all right there. It's in the concave, tiny, minuscule world. Welcome to reality. So as you can see here, as these nebula are not to scale, obviously they're much larger, but the bipolar planetary nebula all are aligned along the central Milky Way band, the swaddling band, the celestial sphere in the concave Earth. Their axes are perpendicular to the band. This has been discovered and confirmed by scientists. It's so easy, guys. So simple. I'm baffled. I don't know what to say. Why are these intelligent people so oblivious to this fact?
Okay, the Milky Way band, the swaddling band around the central celestial literal sphere in the concave Earth, is causing these bipolar planetary nebula to split like that into the different two polarizing magnetic fluxes. Why? Why can't they see that?
One of the most remarkable types of objects observed in space is the bipolar planetary nebula. Today, a team of scientists is reporting an astonishing discovery. The axes of bipolar nebulae within the Milky Way's central bulge are aligned perpendicular to the plane of the galaxy.
No way!
The lead author of the study states, "This really is a surprising find, and if it holds true, a very important one."
Yeah, I think it's a little bit important.
The alignment we're seeing for these bipolar nebulae indicates something bizarre about star systems within the central bulge.
Yeah, I would say that.
What does this discovery tell us about the nature of planetary nebulae?
We've all seen those beautiful images of
Wow.
planetary nebulae, the hourglass-shaped objects that have been seen and photographed very successfully through the Hubble Space Telescope and other large new telescopes. The more detail it's seen, of course, the more puzzles have arisen. But the greatest puzzle of all has just arrived in the news that it's been discovered that these hourglass shapes in the central bulge of our galaxy all have, if you like, the stems of the hourglass all facing in the plane of the galaxy. And this is not to be expected if these shapes are caused by the star itself and any objects that happen to be orbiting that star.
But it is to be expected if there is a division band that separates the magnetic fluxes and it polarizes the fluxes. This band steers the sun when the sun goes through this band every 6 months. Simple. Concave theory wins. Okay? Hands down. Welcome to reality, people.
Okay, I've been asked about how the horizon works within the concave Earth. I told you before, light bends. It's been proven to bend. There's been experimentation on light bending. And what I think is happening is we have this phi ratio curve extending from the observer like that. Okay, this is an assumption, but I think it's very possible since the golden ratios throughout nature. So I just do this comparison and contrast between a concave Earth and a convex Earth. If we're standing on a convex Earth and we see light being straight, we see the sun over here. However, that's not the case. We're in the Earth, so basically the sun flips its orientation on us. And so what we think is the top of the sun when it rises like that is actually the bottom of the sun. The moon here is a little bit closer to us, and so it would start a little bit later. However, because the moon is slower in the sky, 25 hours to go around as opposed to the sun going 24 hours, it would take about the same amount of time from moonrise to moonset as opposed to from sunrise to sunset. Now, there's also an atmospheric refraction bulge that's created. That's why we see ships sinking in the distance. It's actually just an illusion. However, because we have this bulge, that creates an edge for us. So that creates a threshold. So that's why we see a literal horizon. And so this threshold extends all the way up like that. And so that's the clipping point. So this blue line would be the clipping point when the sun and the moon start, and the horizon starts like that, extends up like that. Going over here, we can actually assume the distance of the sun away from us, if this curve is the correct curve, based on knowing that we know the diameter of the Earth, which would be 7,918 miles. So if we just calculate that distance, the radius, 3959, this intersecting point of the sun would be 2106, 2,106 miles, which was I actually initially thought. You know, I said, the sun's probably about 2,000 miles away. So if that's the case, that's what it would be. And the diameter of the celestial sphere would be 1853 times 2, which is 3706. Also, the sun, I told you before about the darkness funnel, which creates over here on the opposite side. I would have to assume that the sunlight is a little bit sagging a little bit, because I don't think the funnel's way over here. I actually think it's a little bit lower. And so that's where that funnel would go. But that's That's what's really going on, guys. Light is bending up like that. It's been proven to bend. It does bend. Also, the visibility of stars beyond the pole axis, like if you're standing on the equator and you see those time-lapsed star trail photography footage, you will see beyond the pole star. And so if this light is bending up like that, this clipping point, you're going to see beyond the pole star, because this blue line would be the pole star axis. And so you're seeing beyond that. It all makes sense within the concave Earth. It's a masterful deception and illusion, but that's what's really going on. Also, like sometimes you will see the sun, they call the superior mirage. You'll see that horizontal crease. There's like a division line where the sun's going down, and then it gets clipped at this line, and then it rises up again. They say that's due to the temperature of the air difference, but I have a feeling it's caused by the glass sky. This refraction that's going on is creating this horizontal crease. I made a previous video about that. So there you go. That's how the horizon works. This is reality. Talk to you later. Hi guys, this is a follow-up video to the previous video where I was demonstrating to that gentleman that how we can see the Southern Cross and not have our telescopes pointing directly up. And so I was taking it a little bit further here, and you know, this really is a good guide to help you realize from whatever location you are in the Earth. Okay, see how I have this pole going right to my location here in South Padre Island, Texas, where this becomes the zenith point of the sky. Okay, and so this blue area is just the viewing area that you would see from that perspective, from that vantage point. Okay, and so with the celestial sphere spinning counterclockwise behind it, and with these lines here showing, it's giving you, if you look at this axis here and this axis here, that becomes your cardinal directions. Okay, if I can get that straight, there we go, like that. So we have north, we have east, we have south, and we have west, right? Or actually, no, it's reverse, I'm sorry. So this is the east, that's the north, I'm sorry, that's the west, that's the north. Did I say west? Okay, east. East is this way. Okay, and west is this way. I'm sorry, I get confused sometimes. I'm sure you do too. Especially when viewing through this model. But, okay, so north is there and south is over there. And as you can see, the spinning ball behind it, it has these contour lines, and they're curving up like that. Okay, now what happens in the northern hemisphere is, for the most part, if you're further up north above the Tropic of Cancer, you're going to see the sun rising slightly northward. You know, it's not directly straight east, but it's going to come a little bit higher, a little bit more north. It's going to arc in the sky like that. So this is our arc in the sky, but it's in reverse. Instead of appearing like a dome above you, it's showing it as a convex ceiling, the reality of the situation. So it, you know, sun rises in the east, slightly north, arcs down, gets to the zenith point, so it's getting more south during the day, right? And then it's going to arc back up, and then it's going to arc and set in the northwest. So northeast, zenith, northwest. So this is a really good guide to help you understand what's really going on in the sky and how we see the sun, how we see the arc of the sun throughout the day from whatever latitude you're at. Okay? Thanks for watching.
Hello people, I wanted to do a little video about the heavenly octahedron in the middle of the concave Earth, and what I did actually is I went back to the Canadian Meteor Orbit Radar, Seymour, and what they totally missed it. I think this image that they're producing with their radar imagery is indicative of sporadic meteoroids. Okay, it's quite plain to see. This is just, it's radar imagery of the octahedron in the middle of the concave Earth, along with the celestial sphere. And then it has these hot points. There's one at the top here, and then there's one at the sides. They call this one the helion and the antihelion, and this one the toroidal. But what they did is actually they went through the whole year. So you have the 5th day of the year, the 15th day of the year, all the way up to the 355th day of the year, meaning that 365, well, I'm not sure why they don't have 365, but I guess they went by 5s. So what I did was I brought it in Photoshop, and I did a little animated GIF of it. I'll play that for you right now. Play. There we go. Now look what we have here. You see the north apex of the octahedron pretty much stays visible throughout the whole year. However, the south one only becomes visible during part of the year, i.e. when the sun goes south in the wintertime. And so we're getting a preference of warmth or activity more in the northern side, on the northern side. So this is really why the northern hemisphere is warmer than the southern hemisphere, because it not only has the sun, which is orbiting cylindrically around the celestial sphere yearly, but it also has the north side of the octahedron. The Bible calls it the sides of the north in the book of Isaiah 14 and Psalm 48, I believe. So the sides of the north, the top of the north apex side of the octahedron stays lit or stays warm throughout the entire year. And that's also why I believe we're seeing these hot spots here at the top, because I believe that the north side is emanating this magnetism, this heat, this light. The Father of Lights is behind the celestial sphere at the top, the sides of the north. And that is why the northern hemisphere has more land, it's warmer, and I believe also in order to compensate, to kind of just even out a little bit, what God originally did was he allowed the sun to get closer to the Earth in the southern hemisphere. I'll get my concave Earth analemma video. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Analemma, concave Earth. There it is. So, I'll fast forward over here to this part where we see the analemma, and the sun is getting closer in the southern hemisphere in order to kind of counterbalance the heat so it doesn't get too cold, too frigid. Fast forward to my animation there, you see the sun is closer to the Earth in the south and further away from the Earth, because the Earth already has the warmth of the northern side of the octahedron pretty much throughout the whole year. So that's why we have we can see that the sun is actually a little bit bigger in the sky with its angular diameter like that. And so that is why, if you watch this guy, Airscript Dubé, he misapplies the reason why it's warmer in the north than it is in the south. It's kind of funny the way he just talks about this. I think he's intentionally lying. He's also using NLP hypnotism. Just look at
7:29 a.m.
Just look at this. He goes for a whole 3 minutes of just revolving. He wants to hypnotize you, and using his monotone voice here.
And note of their differences, stating the range of temperature is limited. there being no excess of either
It's all from a script.
heat or cold.
Look at that.
Compared with the climate
Listen
of
to
England,
me.
the summer
Be
of New
hypnotized.
Zealand
Just
felt
keep
very
watching
clearly
this.
so oppressive. But
Look
then
at all
there
the
is not
fools, too.
twilight which you get in
They get
England.
duped by him. And he's also talking about the times of the day in New Zealand, which is, which he says is negative 42 degrees latitude, versus England, which is 52 degrees latitude. And he's comparing two completely different latitudes. They're conjugates. See, what you really need to do, if you compare negative 42 degrees to positive 42, it's virtually the same. He's comparing apples to oranges, and all these people are just being duped by him. Air script Dubé. See, I already calculated this out. So like negative 42 degrees south, he's saying the longest day is 15 hours and 15 minutes. Actually, I calculated it out. It's a little bit different than what he says. I went over here and I just quickly calculated that out. And then, so that's negative 42 degrees south. And then positive 42, it's virtually the same. 15 hours, 15 minutes. 15 hours, 15 minutes, the same. The shortest day of the year on December 21st, actually on June 21st in the south, it's going to be 9 hours and 7 minutes. Oh, looky here, 9 hours and 7 minutes, the same. So you got to compare apples to apples, dude. So even like this, 52 degrees north, which is in England, the longest day of the year in the summer, 16 hours, 39 minutes. And compare that to somewhere 52 degrees south, you get a very close approximation. 16 hours and 44 minutes, just 5 minutes off. So there's nothing there. Even, the shortest day of the year, 7 hours and 50 versus 7 hours and 45, 5 minute difference. So please, people, be smarter than that. You really want to be hypnotized by this bullshit? This is intentional. He's going on for 2 minutes with this, just, this animation, circling, and you're listening to his hypnotic voice.
Did not shine as brilliantly as it does in England.
As he's reading off a script.
The finest day.
Yeah, I don't do scripting, sorry. This is all impromptu.
8 minutes. On the summer solstice.
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to manipulate you like that. So going back here, this is groundbreaking. I mean, it's showing you right there an animation of what's really going on in the concave Earth. Play that again. It's pretty wild. Look at that. Summer, winter, summer, winter, summer, winter. Now, the reason I believe that we're seeing more concentrated areas at the equator, well, for one, that's where we have the magnetic equilibrium happening, but also too because of the way when you view the celestial sphere, perspective-wise, if you just take like a ring of equidistant points around the equator, when you look straight on like that, you're gonna see more behind each other on the sides, so you're gonna get more activity on the right and left. So that's why that is happening. So yeah, there you go. Thank you, Seymour, for inadvertently showing us the celestial sphere, the octahedron in the middle of the concave Earth. And they totally misapply it to sporadic meteoroids, which is not what is happening here. They're actually showing the activity in heaven, right in the middle of the Earth. That's pretty wild stuff there. So yeah, concave Earth reality. It's the only option to the shape of the Earth. Everything works. Or the planets work. Nothing works. Nothing works on a flat Earth. It doesn't work, guys. It's a psyop. The analemma works like that. All right. I'll put some links on the bottom for you guys. Thanks for watching.
Fraser Clown, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm Fraser Cain, the publisher of Universe Today. Have you ever noticed that the moon always looks the same?
Have you ever noticed that when people initially jerk like that, it's a hypnotic suggestion to jolt you into their attention? Watch again.
Sure, the phase changes, but the actual features on the moon always look the same from month to month. Does the moon rotate? What's going on? From our perspective here on Earth, the moon always shows us the same face because it's tidally locked to our planet. At some point in the distant past, the moon did rotate from our perspective, but the Earth's gravity kept pulling unevenly at the moon, slowing its rotation.
And it just happens to now, it's perfectly in sync, ladies and gentlemen. At some point in our distant past, yeah, well, but now, it's just perfectly in sync now, magically.
Eventually, the moon locked into place, always displaying the same side to it.
Oh, I see, it locked.
But if you look down on the Earth-Moon system from the North Celestial Pole, from the perspective of Polaris, the North Star, you'd see that the moon actually does rotate on its axis. In fact, as the...
Well, I see that's an animation, yeah, but not reality, dude. I showed you how the moon actually operates within the concave Earth, okay? I showed you the sidereal month. So as you see it moving around here, we have a little marker indicating our place on the Earth. Looks like we're in Africa somewhere. And once it accumulates to 27.32 days, that marks the sidereal month of the moon. That's how many days it takes for the moon to align back up with the celestial sphere. The synodic month. And if we go on to 29.53 days, that is what is called a synodic month. That is where we mark new moon to new moon, where the sun and the moon align up. The anomalistic month. Now I'm going to reverse the rotation of the moon by locking the sun in place so we can see the actual anomalistic month, where it records the perigee and the apogee. Perigee is when it's closest to the Earth and it's going to move faster, and apogee is further away from the Earth when it's going to move slower. So you'll see the variable speed of the moon. Remember, ellipses are fiction. Kepler was wrong. You see, the green line is a linear line. It's moving at a constant rate, and the moon is slowly beginning to slow down as the green line catches up as it enters apogee when it's further away from the Earth. So there's an influence that the moon has and the Earth has on the moon. When it moves further away from the Earth, it begins to slow down, and when it gets closer to the Earth, it begins to speed up again. You see the moon is approaching, getting faster. There's actually a 9-year cycle, actually it's 8.85 years of the anomalistic months. So every 117 months, the moon will do a complete circuit, almost like spirograph. There's a mechanism the ancient Greeks used. Archimedes actually probably made it. It was called the Antikythera device, and it actually predicted the eclipses and the motions of the planets. See, the Earth is a precise mechanism. This would never work in a heliocentric vast universe. So after 117 months, it finishes the complete circuit of the anomalistic cycle. Very cool. And the draconic month. Looking front on, we see the declination range of the moon and the sun as they pass across the sky. From left to right, we see the termination line of the moon changing from day to day. We also see the backside of the moon. This is the lunar month of January 20th to February 18th. We see the equator there is actually shared with the celestial sphere. That means there's no tilt to the Earth. We can also see the sun's ecliptic at negative 23.5 to 23.5, which means the sun is oscillating in a cylindrical path from year to year. This cycle for the moon is called the draconic month at 27.21 days. And the lunar standstill of 18.6 years is the time in which the moon actually fluctuates in the sky, going from very high to a major lunar standstill at negative 28.5 to 28.5 to a lower minor lunar standstill of negative 18.5 to 18.5. This October, we are entering into a minor lunar standstill, so the moon will not ascend or descend that high in the sky. When the sun is low like that in the south, the bond it has with the top of the pyramid loosens, so it gets closer to the Earth. That's why we have a bigger angular diameter of the sun in the south. This is also how we can predict lunar and solar eclipses, because everything is synchronized within this time mechanism of the concave Earth. The simplest answer is always the best answer. Occam's razor.
And how the moon affects tides.
There have been found traces of metal in the glass sky, magnetite or iron. So the glass sky is slightly magnetic. So as the moon orbits around, because I believe the moon as well is metal, so the moon is actually pulling the glass sky closer to itself as it moves around the inside of the Earth throughout the day. Not only that, on the moon side of the sky, of the glass sky, but on the opposite side, I believe there's a stress reaction that's happening as well. So we have this pinching. So this glass sky looking top down is more like an oval. So there's your only ellipse within the concave Earth. So this glass sky is moving around throughout the day. I believe the sun also is magnetic, but it doesn't have as much effect on the glass because it's further away. And so the sun will affect the tides as well, but predominantly it's the moon.
And I showed you how lunar eclipses happen.
Perfectly beautifully within the concave Earth. And you know what? There's a reason why it doesn't rotate. It is actually locked, but it's only a half sphere. Okay, it's metal, it's magnetic. But there's a force that you neglect to talk about. It's called centripetal force. You know what that force is, Mr. Fraser Clown? Where's my ball? Here it is. Got a half tennis ball here. Centripetal force. Now if I were to actually attach this with a rubber band and spin it really fast, obviously the circle would be bigger, right? If I slowed it down, the circle would be small. That's what's happening with our moon. There's an apogee and a perigee. The perigee is when it's closer to the Earth. Okay, this is spinning inside the concave Earth. It's very simple, people. Higher tension to the string makes a bigger circle, closer to the Earth and more velocity. Higher tension, higher speed, closer to the Earth, perigee. Lower tension, lower speed, farther away from the Earth, apogee. Also, there's a tilt to the moon. We call that libration. It tilts every 8 degrees each way, okay? It also has to do with the concept of angular momentum within the concave Earth. It's very simple. The higher tension during the perigee, moon is going to tilt this way. During apogee, it's going to tilt the other way. So I just solved the reason why we have libration. It only makes sense within the concave Earth, ladies and gentlemen. It only makes sense. Okay? Let's go on though. I want to hear Fraser talk a little bit.
The moon travels around the Earth in a counterclockwise orbit every 27.5 days. It also completes one full rotation on its axis, also moving in a counterclockwise direction. If you look at the time-lapse animation of the moon moving entirely through its phases over the...
What do you think the probabilities are that the moon would complete one orbit of rotation every lunar month? Just perfectly match with the Earth. Well, let's just call it lunar locking or tidal locking, whatever they want to call it, but really? Gee, that's kind of coincidental, don't you think? Let's go on, Fraser Clown.
Over the course of a month, you'll notice a strange wobble as if the moon is rocking back and forth on its axis a bit. This is known as libration. On average, the moon is tidally locked to the Earth's surface, but its actual orbit is elliptical. It moves closer and then more distant from the Earth. When the moon is at its closest point, its rotation is slower than its orbital speed, so we see an additional 8 degrees on its eastern side. And then when the moon...
That's what I just told you, right? Higher tension, closer to the Earth. You're going to see more of it more of the moon on its eastern side. Okay? It has nothing to do with the slower rotation of the Earth, of the moon. The moon is not rotating, ladies and gentlemen. Higher tension, perigee, angular momentum, higher tension, the moon tilts 8 degrees. Lower tension, apogee, the moon tilts the other way 8 degrees. There's no rotation to the moon.
8 degrees
Keep going,
on
fat
its
man.
eastern side. And then when the moon is at its most distant point, the rotation is faster than its orbital speed, so we can see 8 degrees on the western side. Libration allowed astronomers to map out more of the moon's surface than we could see if the moon followed a circular orbit. Until the space age, half the moon was hidden from us, always facing...
It still is half. It still is half hidden from you. Watch, listen.
...away. This hemisphere of the moon was finally first observed by the Soviet Luna 3 probe in 1959.
Stop! The Soviet Luna 3 probe of 1959. Did you know that was a hoax? Did you know that was a hoax, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, it was. The photos that the Soviets showed from 1959 and onward of the moon are just models of a moon filmed in a studio somewhere. That is why the United States had the opportunity to fake their moon landings, because they held it as leverage against the Soviets, blackmailed. Soviets, we know you faked this bullshit moon crap, fake back of the moon shit, so we're going to stage our moon landings, and if you blow our cover, we'll blow yours. So it was a form of blackmail. Also now, think about this, okay? Let's hear it from the lips of Mr. Fat Man, Fraser Clown himself. Hold on.
Followed by the first human eyes with Apollo 8 in 1968. The two hemispheres of the moon are very different. While the near side is covered with large basaltic plains called maria, the far side is almost completely covered in craters.
Why? Why would that be completely different? Why would two sides of the moon be completely different? Think about this, guys. Think 1959, Soviet hoaxed the back of the moon, right? They set the mold for the back of the moon, okay? You cannot veer off course of the way that moon looks now. Because if you do, you'll know, everybody will know that it's fake, even though it is fake. You understand what I'm saying? Psychology there, okay? Once the Soviets faked the backside of the moon with a model in a photo studio somewhere, that cast the mold for the backside of the moon. That's what it looks like. So we cannot veer off the course. We have to keep it the same similitude. That's why it looks very different. Soviets simply added more craters to their model of the back of the moon. See, everything just bam, 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 snaps right into place once you understand concave Earth, glass sky, half bowl-shaped moon, centripetal force. Everything's working in circle. There's no elliptical path to the moon. You've been found out, you liar, Mr. Fraser Clown. You're a liar. Liar.
The reasons for this difference is still a mystery to planetary scientists.
It's not a mystery anymore.
So yes, the moon does rotate.
Shut up, asshole. Okay.
Exactly matches
enough of you,
around
clown. Later, guys. This is an a posteriori disclaimer about this video I just made. You know, as I was compiling the video, I realized that, you know, NASA had their hands tied behind their back because the Soviets initially lied, and so America lied too, and so now I realize they've been waiting for me to expose this, both America and Russia. So please forgive me for the insults, people at NASA, Fraser, other people too. And that's also why NASA's revealing, like, you know, the Curiosity rover, they show the shadow of the man on Mars. See, they want the lies slowly, well, now it's rapidly coming out, and I'm going to be revealed. The concave earth, the glass sky, the Messiah will be revealed, the hail of the Lord Jesus Christ. So I feel bad for insulting, but also I feel a sense of, wow, little old me exposed this big lie of these two superpower countries. So I'm kind of humbled by it. So later.
Gegenschein. Did you ever hear the zodiacal light? Maybe, maybe not. But let me just explain to you what I was doing where I discovered the Gegenschein. I was looking for some type of evidence for some kind of anti-solar illumination zone opposite the sun within the celestial sphere, because if you understand anything about how I explained to you the concave Earth, is that sunlight is wrapping around and converging at the other side. I can show you an illustration of that. This one that I pulled before. The sun at the top here is emanating the light and it is converging at the other side. Very similar to like if you look at a glass of water in the sunlight and you will see the caustic lines. They will converge the opposite side of the illumination. And that's what's happening. Initially I was researching this to find out, or to show you, to illustrate to you how the sun receives illumination. Now, I said from both sides in the previous video, but this is just a cross section. So it's more than just both sides. It's really every side, every angle that the sun is wrapping around. It's illuminating the moon. And so that's why we don't see the graduated shading of the moon. The front side is spherical. It's a half sphere, but we would normally see graduating shading on the moon, but we don't really see that, do we? And you look at a full moon, it's completely illuminated. It's flooded with light. And so that is why that is happening. And I was going to illustrate that. I was going to animate that. I did animate that. Let me just start this rendering here. But these contour lines are showing how the light is converging at this little convergence point. And I didn't even know they had a name for this. They call it the Gegenschein. Now, Gegenschein. It's very critical for you to understand why a lunar eclipse cannot work in a heliocentric model, or a flat model either, but because the Gegenschein, it is a faint patch of light directly opposite the sun, the anti-solar point of the sun. They call it the Lagrangian point number 2. I can show you that over here. Let me get me out of the way here. The Lagrangian point number 2 here. See, this point here is opposite. This is a heliocentric model, of course, but here's the Earth. Now, think about this. Where do lunar eclipses happen? They happen at this Lagrangian point number 2. They happen exactly opposite, in a heliocentric model, they happen exactly opposite the sun, with the moon, with the Earth directly between the sun and the moon. You cannot, ladies and gentlemen, let me reiterate this for you. You cannot have a lunar eclipse in front of the Gegenschein in a heliocentric model. They are mutually exclusive. The moon cannot be covered in Earth's shadow at a point where there is illumination. It's that simple. Do you understand what I'm saying? This Gegenschein point is a bright spot, and that's where the lunar eclipse supposedly happens. Here's an image in Photoshop of the Gegenschein. Now, they will say it's oval in shape, but what I did is I boosted up the curves. Normally it looks like this, kind of murky. But I boosted up the curves because I wanted to see, I didn't think it was oval, and it's not. It's circular. You can see a circular illumination. Yes, you have this banding effect. I believe that's happening because of the magnetic field of the sun. For some reason, the sun's light is projecting it like that, but in the center, it's still circular. Okay? So this circular area, if you go back to my illustration here, this is a cross-section top-down. You can imagine this shape here of an apple. It's like an apple, basically, okay? So when the moon is in the apple, the waxing, the first quarter, the waxing gibbous, the waning gibbous, the third quarter,
When even the full moon is still in the apple. When it leaves the apple, when it goes outside the apple, at the little butt of the apple, it doesn't get illuminated because it's not in this area of light, okay? Let me show you in 3D what I'm talking about here, okay? Here's a wireframe mode here. Okay, this is the moon. Remember I told you it's a half sphere. And so, a little bit hard to tell here with this wireframe, but here if I turn like that, you see how it's sticking itself out of the apple? And that's where it does not have the illumination, okay? Inside the apple, it's lit. Outside, it's not. And so here's Gegenschein right here. This is illuminating. It's a convergent point where the light converges, okay? And I'll go back and I could show you how, this is a previous video I made, how lunar eclipses happen, okay? Here's the Gegenschein. I called it the darkness funnel. I didn't know it had a name for it, but it actually does. And so when the moon goes through, when it leaves the apple and sticks out in, in front of the Gegenschein, it's going to be darker. It's going to be eclipsed. We'll go to the April 4th eclipse here. It's coming up here. Okay. Now, going back to what I said before, this point destroys heliocentrism. Type error. Some astronomers deny it even being there, but there is overwhelming, undeniable evidence. Okay? Undeniable evidence. Let me show you some research here. Gegenschein. Another mysterious phenomenon associated with the zodiacal light is known as, by its German appellation, the Gegenschein. It is said that in that point of the heavens directly opposite the sun, there is an elliptical patch of light. Now, I just told you I don't think it's elliptical. I think it's circular. I showed you how when you boost up the curves, it's circular. A few degrees in extent of such extreme faintness that it can be seen only by the most sensitive eyes under the best conditions and through the clearest atmosphere. This phenomenon seems so difficult to account for that its existence is sometimes doubted. Now, why do you think people would doubt that? Would doubt its existence? You know why, don't you? Because you cannot have a lunar eclipse in a heliocentric model. That's why they doubt its existence. Yet, the testimony is in its favor, is difficult to set aside. And look at this Wikipedia page on the Gegenschein. Look how weak, look how anemic it is. This is all they talk, this is all they have. If that is not a sign, if that is not indicative that they don't want people to know about the Gegenschein, because it destroys a lunar eclipse in a heliocentric model, then I don't know what is. Okay, this is all they say. But they have to admit that it's anti-solar. Gegenschein. It's German for countershine, a faint brightening of the night sky in the region of the anti-solar point. Gegenschein. Ladies and gentlemen. Now, the only way it works is within a concave Earth when the moon, like I said before, is leaving the apple zone of illumination. Okay? The moon is out here like that. It cannot be lit anymore because it's outside the zone. Okay? It's Gegenschein. It's like an inverted nipple. Okay? It's so for the most part, if you go from a top-down view here, for the most part, the moon stays within the apple. It only leaves the apple when it goes through the inverted nipple. Gegenschein. It's hard to say that. But that's what's happening. Now, I also talked before about, I believe that the light that's emanating from the sun is vortexual, and so this Gegenschein, this darkness funnel, it actually will fluctuate north and south. That's why we only get lunar eclipses during the equinoxes, during early April or late September. And let's go back here in After Effects here and play with the moon here. So you take this moon, oops, 1 second here, my arrow, and
you can move it around. See, like when it's not orange like that, it's inside the apple of illumination. When I bring it out like that, it leaves the apple zone of illumination, and it goes in front of the
Gegenschein.
Okay, I believe it's orange like that because of the glass sky, because red is the least amount of refraction when light goes through glass, and just the incident angle involved like that. I believe that's why the moon turns red like that. But that's why the lunar eclipse, now a lot of people, initially when they try to refute concave Earth, they will say, well, yeah, how do you explain lunar eclipses? Well, now we can turn that around, concavers. How do you explain the
Gegenschein?
How can the moon be eclipsed right in the exact area where there is illumination? I'm sure you got an answer for that. Maybe, what is your answer? You got to pull something out of your ass, don't you? Concave Earth is reality. You understand that? You understand how much you've been lied to, ladies and gentlemen?
There's a reason why the moon doesn't appear to spin. There's a reason why some say the moon is hollow. Do you know the way? Do you know the way of light? Where is the place of darkness? Where is the place of darkness?
Okay, I've been asked about how the horizon works within the concave Earth. I told you before, light bends. It's been proven to bend. There's been experimentation on light bending. And what I think is happening is we have this phi ratio curve extending from the observer like that. Okay, this is an assumption, but I think it's very possible since phi, the golden ratios throughout nature. So I just do this comparison and contrast between a concave Earth and a convex Earth. If we're standing on a convex Earth and we see light being straight, we see the sun over here. However, that's not the case. We're in the Earth, so basically the sun flips its orientation on us. And so what we think is the top of the sun when it rises like that is actually the bottom of the sun. The moon here is a little bit closer to us, and so it would start a little bit later. However, because the moon is slower in the sky, 25 hours to go around as opposed to the sun going 24 hours, it would take about the same amount of time from moonrise to moonset as opposed to from sunrise to sunset. Now, there's also an atmospheric refraction bulge that's created. That's why we see ships sinking in the distance. It's actually just an illusion. However, because we have this bulge, that creates an edge for us. So that creates a threshold. So that's why we see a literal horizon. And so this threshold extends all the way up like that. And so that's the clipping point. So this blue line would be the clipping point when the sun and the moon start, and the horizon starts like that, extends up like that. Going over here, we can actually assume the distance of the sun away from us, if this curve is the correct curve, based on knowing that we know the diameter of the Earth, which would be 7,918 miles. So if we just calculate that distance, the radius, 3959, this intersecting point of the sun would be 2106, 2,106 miles, which was what I actually initially thought. You know, I said, the sun's probably about 2,000 miles away. So if that's the case, that's what it would be. And the diameter of the celestial sphere would be 1853 times 2, which is 3706. Also, the sun, I told you before about the darkness funnel, which creates over here on the opposite side. I would have to assume that the sunlight is a little bit sagging a little bit, because I don't think the funnel's way over here. I actually think it's a little bit lower. And so that's where that funnel would go. But that's what's really going on, guys. Light is bending up like that. It's been proven to bend. It does bend. Also, the visibility of stars beyond the pole axis, like if you're standing on the equator and you see those time-lapsed star trail photography footage, you will see beyond the pole star. And so if this light is bending up like that, this clipping point, you're going to see beyond the pole star, because this blue line would be the pole star axis. And so you're seeing beyond that. It all makes sense within the concave Earth. It's a masterful deception and illusion, but that's what's really going on. Also, like sometimes you will see the sun, they call this superior mirage. You'll see that horizontal crease. There's like a division line where the sun's going down, and then it gets clipped at this line, and then it rises up again. They say that's due to the temperature of the air difference, but I have a feeling it's caused by the glass sky. This refraction that's going on is creating this horizontal crease. I made a previous video about that. So there you go. That's how the horizon works. This is reality. Talk to you later.
The sun sets in the east, and rises in the west. The sun sets in the east, rising in the west. The sun sets in the east, rising in the west. The sun sets in the east, sets in the east, rising in the west. Sets in the east and rises, sets in the east and rises in the west. Sun sets in the east, rise. Anyway, I was thinking, good song, Andreas. What do you think? The sun sets in the east and rises in the west. The sun sets in the east and rises in the west. Rises in the east, rises in the west. To the east, rise to the east, rise in the west. The underside of clouds. How do we see the underside of clouds? Well, if you understand that light can only bend, and it bends within the concave Earth, you will understand simply that, like in this diagram here, the sun is up here, and it's emanating its light. It's curving more so here toward the sun, and then it curves around like that. It creates a horizon line there, and it bends back up. So if we zoom real close in there, we see the sun hitting the horizon and then bending back up to illuminate the underside of the cloud. That's how the underside of the cloud is illuminated. And this only happens during sunrise and sunset. Obviously, when the sun is closer or higher up in the sky, it's not going to have the extreme angle. It's going to be like more over here, like in my flash animation here. So if the sun is like over here, it's not going to be able to illuminate the underside of the cloud. It only happens during the sunrise and the sunset. Okay, this is the only way it's possible. This is the only correct model. I was just watching this one video here.
this one, the Snoopy Doo guy, and get some good information why flat Earth is totally impossible, with cartography, with the distance from the equator, with plane flights. It totally annihilates flat Earth theory. Just, I'm sorry, guys, flat earthers, it doesn't work. And so, but then he does talk about the underside of clouds, and he's saying that's only possible on a convex Earth with the sun, with trigonometry appearing to be lower than the clouds. Well, that's not true, because if you understand Conandrum's videos, he actually goes and gets the NOAA data and the PSA algorithms that show the elevation angles at different longitudes around a convex ball Earth, and they do not point to one specific light source. They point to many suns. And I recommend you becoming very familiar with Conandrum's videos. They're very informative, and they show that he proves that light has to bend. And with experimentation, like with Wilhelm Martin, and with the rectilineator showing that the Earth curves upward, we can eliminate all the impossibilities and come to the conclusion that Earth is concave. Okay? It's very simple. There's no emotion. It's just logic, guys. Let's watch my Earth dialectic again. Okay, the selenelion. I actually uploaded a video about this just recently, and then I realized that I had to correct the refraction. And so I'm going to show you that right now. The selenelion is a term in which they use to describe the phenomenon when the sun and the moon are above the horizon during a lunar eclipse. How can that be happening? They will tell you it's because of atmospheric refraction. However, within a standard conventional heliocentric model, there is not enough atmospheric refraction to compensate for the amount of lift of the sun and the moon, so we see them simultaneously above the horizon. So what is going on here? They actually avoid the answer to that. Actually, Mr. Rich from Mr. Thrive, Mr. Thrive and Survive, I left a comment on his video where he tries to tell you what they're doing. He's right about what they're doing. They are not explaining the selenelion. They're avoiding the question and trying to replace it and distract you.
with their circus music. And so, but however, Mr. Rich fails because he doesn't understand that a lunar eclipse cannot possibly work. They can't, you can't have that working within a flat Earth theory. There is no object to eclipse the moon. There is a good reason to believe that it works within a concave Earth model. Actually, it's the only model that correctly describes a lunar eclipse because of the Gegenschein. If you watch my videos before about the Gegenschein, you will understand that how can, within a standard conventional heliocentric model, how can there be a anti-solar illumination point right where there should be darkness, right where there should be the Earth's shadow? So it doesn't work. So the only answer and explanation to the lunar eclipse is within the concave Earth model with bending light. And so Mr. Rich, he deletes my comments, so I screen capped this. I said, eliminate all the impossibilities, Richie. Yes, a 0.7 degree atmospheric refraction on a heliocentric convex model won't cut it. But also, 2, you cannot explain a lunar eclipse in a flat model. Humble yourself and follow me. The spherical glass sky within the concave Earth is the reason, 1, we get a good 4-degree lift, approximately, of both the sun and the moon. And 2, the reason the moon turns red, because as the sunlight curves around to converge at the Gegenschein, the less refracted light, which happens to be red, the red side of the spectrum refracts less from the glass, projects onto the moon. Okay, so going back a little bit of history here, my animation I created a while ago in Flash, it's on my website. It shows bending light within the concave Earth. If you are the observer down here and you're looking straight across the horizon, your eyesight will actually rise up and bend like that toward the center of the Earth. That is the reason why we cannot see the other side of the Earth, because of the bending light. So this red area is the blind area. We do not see that. So our eye goes right to the center. So that's how it's working like that. So going back to Illustrator, this is a previous illustration I made showing the propagation of light within the concave Earth. I showed you how the lunar phases happen. And so what I did was I simply show you how these glass skies, these concentric layers of glass sky, is actually refracting the light and causing the lift that is happening. So these red curved lines are the refraction lines, and the blue lines, the faded blue object there, that is giving you a reference of how it would be without refraction. It would be like a symmetrical display or array of light, like this right here. You see that the top half and the bottom half are perfectly horizontally symmetrical. Okay, now if I turn on the refraction, you will see that this bottom portion gets smaller than the top portion, like that. So we're getting this lift. That is why we see the sun before actual sunrise. Okay, and we actually have sunset before the sun goes down. That is why this is happening, because of the glass concentric layers in the sky that are lifting the sun and the moon. And so this is the only reason why the selenelion can work. It's within the concave Earth, within the glass skies, and the bending light and the refraction involved. So if you go back, I'll show you the video I made about that a while ago, just holding up a glass bowl. Turn off the audio here. Let's get a bigger picture of that. And you will see how this happens. It's very simple to understand. See that? See the lift going on like that? It's not only lifting it, but it's squishing it as well. It's not only lifting it, the glass. That is why, that's the accurate reason, explanation why the sun gets lifted like that and squished, and the moon does as well. So the selenelion is finally accurately explained with the correct model of the universe, with the glass skies, with the concave Earth, with the bending light, and with the refraction involved. That's the only way you can get that significant amount of lift. So the observer's down here, and we're seeing the moon and the sun simultaneously, even though they are anti-solar. Okay, so see these top little half spheres? That would be if there was no refraction and they were perfectly anti-solar like that.
But since we get the refraction from the concentric glass skies, it's going to lift it like that, and there's going to be an imbalance in symmetry horizontally from the bottom versus the top like that. So that's the same reason why from below the equator, say at 15, 20 degrees south latitude, you can see during, with a time-lapse photography that you see the star trails, you can actually see Polaris spinning like that because of the glass skies. That's the main reason. So it's solved. So this is unprecedented. You've never heard the reason why the selenelion happens. It's all happening because light is bending within the concave Earth. And there are glass skies. Who can make straight that which God has made bent? Thanks for watching. Please like and sub.
shoot it out to 1,000 to the west, we're going to shoot it to 1,000 to the target that we shot in the west. This is our west target here. And as you can see, they've all dropped in quite low. We've got 8 inches from center to the center of the group, which is a little lower than we expected, but we were dealing with some pretty stiff mirage. So we got a nice little group here. We're gonna pack up this target and head down to our target that we shot to the east, and we'll compare the two groups and show you the difference of just switching directions. That's all we did. We switched from west to east. All right, we've made it down to our target on the east target now, and as you can see, they're not quite too high. We've got about 3 inches, maybe 3.5 to the center of the group above bullseye. So if we compare this to our other target, we're 3 inches high here, we're 8 inches low there. That's 11 inches, just over a minute of difference between just shooting from the west to the east.
The Garden of Eden, Mount Meru, Magnetic Mountain, 4 rivers. Now we know why they call it the Magnetic Mountain. Concave Earth beneath the veiled celestial sphere, there is a pyramid, a double pyramid, emanating magnetism. The Garden of Eden has been found within the concave Earth. Who have laid the foundations of the earth? Foundations of the earth. Right there in the middle, guys. Foundations of the earth. Laid them with measures. I stretched the lines across it. Yada, yada, yada. Where are the foundations fastened? It's floating. It's right in the middle of the earth. In the middle of heaven. And the morning stars actually sang together. You know, the morning stars, when the cornerstone was laid on top of the north, on the sides of the north. Stars, solar luminescence, they're singing, get it? Sound, vibration. Yeah, I think you get it. I think you get it. And the sun's got a shot for it too. So, magnetite. It's a mineral, one of the 3 common naturally occurring iron oxides chemical formula, and a member of the spinel group. Magnetite is the most magnetic of all naturally occurring metals on Earth, or in Earth. Its crystal habit is octahedral. The most magnetic element in the Earth is octahedral. Go figure. In crystal field theory, octahedral complexes are by far the most common and the easiest to visualize. According to CFT, an octahedral metal complex forms because of the electrostatic interaction of a positively charged metal ion with 6 negatively charged ligands, or arms here, with the negative ends of dipoles associated with the 6 ligands. So in the middle, you have the positive, middle of the earth, middle of the heaven, tree of life, whatever we're going to call it. It's emanating this push, positive push. Remember the ether push. You're being pushed to the earth. Everything is being pushed from the center. The Earth's field are gyroscopically aligned to the north-south axis. Interesting. Remember how I told you about how when I did my auroras video, had the polar openings, so the magnetic north and south pole actually fluctuate a little bit due to the outer rind actually kind of bending. The actual heaven, the central octahedral heaven, does not move. It's stationary. It says the foundations of the earth shall not be moved in Scripture. And then, of course, you got the 4 equatorial equilibrium points, A, B, C, and D, right there in the ocean, that they balance the geostationary and geosynchronous satellites.
So you tell me, how do you know there's an octahedron in the middle of the concave Earth, Steve? How do you know? Well, like I told you before, I read the Bible, Job chapter 38, verses 4 through 7, laid it with measures, stretched a line upon it, the cornerstone was placed. I read Revelation 21, describes the city as wide as it is long, as it is high. It's 12,000 furlongs. And then I found out that there's magnetic equilibrium points within the ocean along the equator at 90 degrees apart. And then we have a little corroboration from our good old buddies at Not a Straight Answer. You see, I was doing some studying up on the meteoroids that hit the glass sky at 100 kilometers. And this lady was giving a presentation, and she mentioned this little gem that just kind of piqued my interest. She said, the sources of these sporadic meteoroids are coming from the north apex and the south apex. They're also coming from the helion and the antihelion. When you think of pyramid and the word apex, then apex is the top of the pyramid, right? But if it's a north apex and a south apex, you're talking about a double pyramid, an octahedron, right? It's crazy, guys. It's right there in plain sight. Let me show you. It's right there for you all to see. Let me get myself out of the way here. This is from Sporadic Meteor website. Sporadic meteors don't come from completely random directions, which their name implies. Most sporadic meteors come from 6 sporadic sources. Look at this. Look at this imagery. Look at this imagery, people. We have the celestial sphere in the middle of the earth. We have the north apex side of the pyramid. We have the south apex side. I also mentioned to you before that the northern side was brighter than the southern side. Okay, now of course they're going to twist things. They're going to try to fit this within a heliocentric model. They're going to say, well, the apex is in the direction of Earth's motion, so apex meteors collide head-on with Earth. The helion and antihelion, these are the helion and antihelion sources. Now this is also interesting too, because I mentioned before, on one side we have the sun, and then we have the anti-solar point, the Gegenschein. It's right there in plain sight, people. So, and then they also talk about a toroidal origin too. Let me see if I can get that one to you really quick here. There it is.
toroidal origin of meteors. Look at this, guys. So we have the helion and the antihelion coming from the sun, and then we also have the Gegenschein, where the sunlight converges on the opposite side, just like I told you before in the concave Earth. Then we have the north and south apex. We have a octahedron in the middle of the concave Earth, in the middle of heaven, behind the celestial sphere. And the north and south toroidal origin actually traces the perfect outline of the celestial sphere. Even this asteroidal one does as well. It's right there in plain sight, ladies and gentlemen. This is the nail in the coffin for the concave Earth. No doubt about it. Oops, wrong image. No doubt about it, guys. No doubt about it whatsoever. This is what's going on, guys. It's right there. It's right there.
Why do you ask questions?
Seasons within the concave Earth. I animated the sun oscillating around the celestial sphere every 6 months. So when it's in the Tropic of Cancer, you'll notice that you get 24 hours of daylight at the North Pole and 24 hours of darkness on the South Pole. And conversely, when the sun is in the south, you'll see that you will get 24 hours of daylight on the South Pole and 24 hours of darkness on the North Pole. Originally, when I animated the sun, I did it linearly. There was no acceleration or deceleration, so I couldn't get the equinoxes to line up on March 21st or September 21st. However, when I added acceleration and deceleration, so it's decelerating at the extremes like that, the equinoxes lined up perfectly. And so in nature, you can conclude too that if something is orbiting around something magnetically and it's oscillating north and south like that, there's going to be acceleration and deceleration. In a heliocentric model, you have to conclude that the Earth is orbiting around the Sun in an elliptical path. This is very unnatural. You also have to conclude that it's tilting. You have problems with that too as well. And you also have to conclude that it's precessing or wobbling, because it shows that after a year the Sun is in a different location against the stars. But if you understand within the concave Earth, it's all taken care of simply by the fact that there's two different velocities, the velocity of the Sun and the velocity of the celestial sphere, which is slightly faster than the Sun. A sidereal year or a sidereal day is 4 minutes faster than the Sun. So after a full year's time, the Sun is simply just going to be 1/70th of a degree in a different location than the year before. The planets are all magnetically affected by the Sun. So when the Sun is inclined like that, the ecliptic of the planets, that magnetic ecliptic imaginary path, is going to be influenced by it as well. There's a real retrograde motion to the planets. It's not just an apparent retrograde motion caused by a supposed spinning Earth. It's simply the fact that when the planets go behind the celestial sphere opposite the Sun, they're going to get confused magnetically. So they're going to go the other way for a little bit until they catch up with the Sun's influence again, and then go the same way that they were going before. Mercury and Venus, they're going to be orbiting the Sun. So when they go behind the Sun, they're going to get confused as well. So that's how retrograde happens within the concave Earth. The Milky Way band, it's a band, it's not a spiral galaxy. It's actually a literal band that separates the celestial sphere into two different hemispheres, two different magnetically influenced hemispheres that actually steer the Sun. So the Milky Way band has a function. So when the Sun crosses that galactic plane every 6 months, it's also exhibited by the Ulysses satellite. They showed that every 6 months the Sun is oscillating back and forth. So when it crosses that plane, it steers the Sun in the other direction. Like when it's up north like that, it's going to steer the Sun south, and then conversely the same when it goes down south. When the Sun goes down south, when it crosses that plane, it's going to steer the Sun back up north. So it's all being influenced by that dividing line, that Milky Way dividing line. It has a purpose, it has a function. Everything works within the concave Earth. Sunlight is bending around the inside of the Earth. That's how we get lunar eclipses. There's an opposite funnel-shaped void area opposite the Sun. When the moon goes through that void area, it gets eclipsed. North or south of that void area, it's just simply going to be a full moon. So everything works in the concave Earth. You've seen my animation here, I made it a wide angle, so I wanted to include everything, so that's why it kind of looks kind of funky, but it's Occam's razor. The simplest answer is always the best answer. So.
Sky, folks. Totally a glass sky. Look at all this evidence that there's a glass sky. 22 pieces of evidence. Number 1, rainbows, halos, glories, circumzenith arcs, sundogs, and other atmospheric optics, which are created by sunlight passing through glass and being projected onto water vapor. Oh, Romans 8:36. Thanks, Fist. Number 2, Libyan desert glass. The mystery of where it came from is solved if you realize that there's a glass ceiling in the sky. To the sky. Excuse me. That's because there's Crookes star space. I'll get to that later. Number 3, tectonic origin. You guys know what tektites are? That's another mystery. Scientists, they don't know where the tektites are coming from. They don't know if it's coming from the ground because there's no impact craters where they find them, or if it's coming from space. They don't know. Number 4, megakryometeor origin. Large chunks of ice that fall down from the sky randomly, infrequently, but more frequently lately. Now we know where they're coming from. There's actually a whole ice sheet connected to the glass sky. For you were as sheep gone astray, but now returned unto the shepherd and bishop of your souls. Amen. Number 5, birefringence. Birefringence is created through different glasses, different types of material like calcite, where it actually projects a double image, a double refracting image. So sometimes you'll see double suns in the sky. Sometimes you'll see a quadruple rainbow where it's like an offset, like there's another rainbow that's displaced a little bit from the original rainbow. Or you'll see a comet's tail splitting like that. That's all because you're viewing these phenomena through a birefringent glass sky that at certain rotation angles of the sun, because it's polarized in a certain direction, sometimes casts a double image. It's a very weak birefringence. They found it in the Libyan desert glass. They found weak birefringence. But at certain times, at certain angles, it will appear. As a shepherd seeketh out his flock in the day that he is among his sheep that are scattered, so will I seek out my sheep, and they will deliver them out of all places where they have been scattered, in the cloudy and dark day. Cloudy and dark day. It's coming up, guys. 6, ozone. Ozone. Did you realize that ozone is actually generated with the help of the glass sky? And that fresh scent that you smell after thunderstorms? That's the same fresh scent that's replicated in air ionizers with glass plates. The glass actually helps manufacture that fresh scent. Fusion crust. Meteorites are covered with fusion crust. Fusion crust is burnt glass. That means that meteors are melting through the glass and getting covered by burnt glass, by fusion crust. Colorizing of clouds. Sometimes you'll see clouds. They have like a rainbow pattern to them, or reddening of the clouds at the horizon. That's all due to the glass, which casts different colors through different regions of the sky. That's what glass does, folks. Glass disperses the white light. Yeah, the fresh scent after the lawn cut. That's a good smell. Fist. Greenhouse effect, number 9. Obviously, a greenhouse has a glass ceiling. Same thing with our sky. It has a glass ceiling. It traps air, hot air, infrared heat. Number 10, the Kármán line. That is the line at 100 kilometers is said to be the division line between the atmosphere and space. Interesting. It's the same height as the glass sky. Number 11, ultraviolet radiation block, UV block. Did you know our atmosphere blocks out a lot of ultraviolet light? And did you also know that glass blocks out ultraviolet light? Did you know that? Number 12, lightning. If you ever watched an Eric Dollard seminar, you'll realize that lightning is created by dielectric forces moving laterally near glass. Lightning doesn't form from the top down or the bottom up. It actually forms from the sides. The dielectric forces in direct perpendicular positioning of the electromagnetic forces. Number 13, elves and upper atmospheric lightning. Sprites are called upper atmospheric lightning, and so are elves. Elves are the top of the sprites, and they taper off. They stop. They create this plume at 100 kilometers. That's the height of the glass sky. Number 14, shortwave radio, ham radio. It scatters at 100 kilometers. They compare the ionosphere to a sheet of glass. Well, there's no need really to compare it to a sheet of glass, because it actually is a sheet of glass. That accentuates the radio waves and passes them along to the other side of the inside of the Earth. Oh, it's a tab happy guest. Number 15, Operation Fishbowl. You guys remember Operation Fishbowl in 1962? Maybe you weren't alive back then. Starfish Prime. Well, I don't believe they have nuclear weapons, but they said they launched a high-altitude nuclear weapon that exploded at 400 kilometers, and there was an auroral display visible from Hawaii and many other places. See, auroras are created because there's glass. So they burst a hole in the glass sky back then. Operation Fishbowl, does that sound a little bit fishy to you? Well, it should. Number 16, superior mirages, fata morganas. You know that sometimes at the horizon you'll see this horizontal crease at the edge, and it looks like the sun is going down and going up. It has like a double image to it. Well, that's because the glass actually, due to refraction, creates a horizontal crease, and sometimes it's visible at higher latitudes. Number 17, meteor showers, iridium flares. That's all it is, guys. It's the cyclical skidding of inner space debris, particles skidding, creating streaks. There's also a term called triboluminescence. When you rub quartz together, or you rub a rock against quartz, it will light up. So when you see shooting stars, meteor showers, it's because they're skidding across the glass sky. That's all it is, guys. Number 18, redshift. You've probably heard that you've been told that the universe is expanding because they see the redshift of the stars. Well, nothing can be further from the truth. What they don't understand is that there's actually two layers of glass, one at the 100-kilometer level and the other at the celestial sphere level. So you're viewing the stars through two layers of glass, and it's creating chromatic aberration. It's creating the colors. It's creating the shifting. That's all it is. It does not indicate movement away from you. They say it's like the Doppler effect. There's nothing further from the truth. All stellar spectroscopy is debunked due to scientists ignoring chromatic aberration of stars caused by glass. Number 19, aberration of light, stellar aberration. Sometimes astronomers will see slight movement in this, like a displacement in the sky, in the stars, and that's only because the glass sky, it creates a slight apparent displacement of stars due to the refraction. Number 20, space vehicle heat shields, re-entry or entry. They have flush bottoms. They have high temperature resistant material like carbon-carbon matrix used to melt through the glass. And it shall come to pass when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. Yes, Genesis chapter 9, verse 13. The glass sky was formed after the flood, the global flood, ladies and gentlemen. Prior to the flood, there wasn't a glass sky. But we needed, within the concave earth, within this pressurized system, we needed to push. God needed to push the waters down So he compressed the atmosphere with the glass sky. That's why the rainbow is a promise. It's a scientific promise that the Earth, the continents, can never be flooded again, because there's more pressure now. There's more compression. 21, Crookes dark space. There's a man named Crook in the 1800s who found negative charged ions create dark space around glass tubes. It's the same thing with our glass sky. If you read Job chapter 38, verse 19. And as for darkness, where is the place thereof? See, it's hidden. Deep beneath the cover is another perfect wonder, and it's so white as snow. 22, auroras. It's at 100 kilometers. The bottom edge, the bottom end of auroras is at 100 kilometers. The electrons from the sun hit the charged glass sky, causing fluorescent glow and striations. Exit the matrix of deception, people. There is glass in the sky, in the concave Earth.
So, the most asked question by children would be, why is the sky blue? And it's a very good question, and it's a question in which adults give the wrong answer to the children. It's really sad too. Now, I admit that I had to think about that a little bit too. There's three factors that really made me consider why the sky was blue. One is because I thought that the glass sky is yellow in nature. If we look at pieces of Libyan desert glass, we see them as yellow, and I thought there was some kind of color inversion going on there. Maybe it has to do, originally I was thinking about it must be like phosphorus or something in the atmosphere that it switched to color. I'm not a scientist, so I'm just kind of think, why would that change? Why would there be, there might be some kind of inversion, and or maybe it's some kind of polarizing effect, because we know that the sky is polarized and the glass does polarize the sky. However, there's some other options too. Obviously, the main reason people tell you, the main explanation is Rayleigh scattering, which they say the blue light is a shorter wavelength than the red light, and the blue gets scattered more than the red. But then the question arises, well, why isn't the sky violet then? Because violet has the shortest wavelength. And they will tell you that because our eyes don't pick up violet as well as blue. And that's, like this guy asks over here.
Because it's so short. If that's the case, why isn't the sky violet? Okay, here's the thing. The sky...
This guy's a shill. It's kind of pathetic too. Him and Vsauce. It's like they own the internet scientific community, and it's all bullshit. So he will go into, our eyes don't pick up violet as well as blue. Then I did some more research. And then I got to thinking about the electricity that's involved within the concave Earth, within this universe. It's an electric universe, okay? And the sun is the electrode, and the glass sky. See, this is the biggest problem with conventional science, is they will omit any reference to a glass sky, even though there's overwhelming evidence. And so glass, as you know, is an insulator. It's a dielectric. It's a dielectric insulator. And so I was doing some research on plasma cleaning. Let's go over here. And they have this this plasma cleaner. And what it does is it creates the glass is the dielectric barrier discharge. It creates a plasmic discharge. And so there's oxygen within this tube, within this glass tube, and it emits a blue light. Go over here. Show you over here. Plasma cleaning involves removal of impurities and contaminants of an energetic through the use of an energetic plasma or dielectric barrier discharge. Okay, so this glass is the dielectric, it's the barrier, and it's discharging the plasma, which happens to be filled with oxygen. Argon, oxygen, so these are all the same elements that we have in our atmosphere. We have oxygen, nitrogen, argon. It says in plasma, gas atoms are excited to higher energy states and also ionized. As the atoms and molecules relax to the normal, lower energy states, they release a photon of light. This results in the characteristic glow or light associated with plasma. Different gases give different colors. For example, oxygen plasma emits a light blue color. So it's right there. The explanation of why the sky is blue is because of the plasma, the oxygen in the atmosphere, and the fact that it's being emitted by the dielectric barrier discharge glass sky. So I made a little pretty graphic here where I show how excuse me, how the sun, okay, let's go back here for a second here. They have this little diagram here, okay? You have a high voltage electrode on one side, and then you have a ground electrode on the other side. So sandwiched between that is the dielectric barrier and the discharge. So in my graphic, the dielectric barrier would be the glass sky, and the discharge would be the oxygen emitting the plasma, as you see here. So we have the sun, high voltage electrode, the glass sky is the dielectric barrier, the oxygen plasma is the discharge, and then we have a ground electrode. So we have a beautiful capacitor going on here with the glass. The glass is creating the blue plasma. Now when it's red at the sunset or sunrise, I believe that the actual glass sky is is refracting the colors. Red, as I told you before in a previous video, red is the least refracted color, and so all the other colors get refracted away. So that's why we pick up the red. But the blue, I do believe it's because of the glass sky acting as a dielectric barrier that discharges the oxygen. You know, we have the ozone, right? The ozone layer, it's below the stratosphere. So that's why when we get up higher, the sky does not stay blue anymore. We're out of the oxygen zone. We're out of the ozone, okay? It's very simple, guys. Once you understand we're living in the concave Earth, the concave stationary Earth, there's a glass sky that acts as a dielectric barrier, an insulator, which creates this plasma. It's very simple. That's why the sky is blue. Okay? See, what I did is, this is a piece of Libyan desert glass, and I was thinking, well, okay, if I hide that layer, this is the same blue color from the plasma cleaner I have here. And so if I overlaid that Libyan desert glass color with an additive light, so let's just go overlay, it really does not affect the blue that much. So that's why I negated the yellow glass, acting as some kind of color inversion to create the blue sky. So plus when we look along the horizon, we see the blue mist. I mean, if we look at like mountains like 5 miles away, we'll see they are being gelled through this blue, and that's the plasma. That's the plasma in the atmosphere, the oxygen. And that's due to the fact that we are underneath a glass sky that acts as a dielectric barrier, which discharges the plasma. So this is the real reason why the sky is blue. So hopefully you can pass this video around to people and explain to them, you know, people who think that it's Rayleigh scattering. Oh, gotta go. All right, talk to you later, guys. Hi guys, a couple years ago actually, let's see here, this was in November 20th, 2012, I uploaded a video where I was drawing out the schematics for the inversion of the glass sky. I call it the false vault of the sky explained. And I was saying what is happening is, though, it's not a dome, okay? It just gives the illusion of a dome, okay? So we're in the concave ball, we're in the ball Earth. Okay, we have a glass sky above us. Now normally, the way refraction works is that if you're looking at a convex lens in the sky, it's going to shrink objects. However, there's a term called negative
refraction. Well, let's just watch this video where I talk about it a little bit. I didn't mention negative refraction here in the video, but I was just saying how it creates this inversion. So let's just play that. However, because the glass artifice creates this opposition and curvature, it's basically, you know, it actually is a convex ceiling to the sky, but it warps it, turns it in, it inverts it, it makes it into a dome or a vault. That's what we think the sky is. So basically, this is the real. Okay, so it gives an illusion of a dome. Okay, and that is because I believe it is creating negative refraction. So instead of shrinking things behind it, it actually is enlarging them and it's inverting the sky. Now, I was just looking this up. Actually, I knew about this previously, but within the Libyan desert glass, there are traces of graphite. Let me find that really quick. Here we go. The silica glass also contains carbonaceous inclusions consisting of 5 to 50 nanometer thick polygonalized graphite ribbons that form closed structures up to 200 nanometers in diameter. So the graphite ribbons. Now, negative refraction, if you go to Wikipedia, you look up negative refraction, it will say negative refraction is a name for an electromagnetic phenomenon where light rays are refracted at an interface in the reverse sense to that normally expected. Such an effect can be obtained using a metamaterial, which has been designed to achieve a negative value for both electric permittivity and magnetic permeability. Now, metamaterial is a man-made material. Metamaterials are artificial materials engineered to have properties that have not yet been found in nature. However, graphite, this study right here says graphite, which is not a man-made material, it's actually a natural material, has been found to produce negative refraction under certain ultraviolet conditions. I'll find that for you right here. Negative refraction at deep ultraviolet frequency is monocrystalline graphite. Monocrystalline graphite. Using ellipsometry, measurement of the equifrequency contour in the deep ultraviolet frequency region, typically 254 nanometers, obvious negative refraction was demonstrated in monocrystalline graphite for incident angles ranging from 20 to 70 degrees. This negative refraction is attributed to extremely strong anisotropy in the crystal structure of graphite, which gives the crystal indefinite permeability. So, you'll have this little graphic here where I show that I explain what I just read to you, okay? There are little ribbons, microscopic graphite ribbons within the glass that are creating a negative refraction in the sky. So it's actually inverting the sky to give you the illusion that the sky is a dome. So I can just go into Illustrator here. I'll show you really quick. I just made this graphic really quick. Here is the concave Earth, and you're standing on the inside surface. Okay, this thick black line is the surface of the Earth. And if I zoom in real close here, you know, I got an observer here, and this yellow line is the glass sky. Now, let me get the right layer here for you. Okay. Now normally, okay, these purple arrows, normally, that's a normal refraction. It would shrink objects from Earth's perspective. So if you're down here, if you're looking up into the sky, it's shrinking the heavenly objects. And it's giving the normal indications of normal refraction. However, because of the graphite ribbons within the glass sky, it is actually inverting the sky, so it's diverging outward toward you. And that's also why I believe we get the sun and moon illusion at the horizon. With this negative refraction, it simply just turns the convex dome inside out, and you get actually a greater refraction at the extremities here. Okay, the greater the incident angle, the greater the squishing and the greater refraction like that. And so this little blue area would be the apparent dome illusion, the dome illusion that you think is the sky. Negative refraction in glass creates the sky dome illusion. Okay, so light is bending within the Earth. If you're new to this phi ratio trajectory of vision is showing how light actually bends. It gives the illusion that you're living on a ball. And with this negative refraction of the glass sky, it inverts the heavens. Okay?